So welcome once again to everyone. This month's talk, as I mentioned, is the Tedi Mining 50th Anniversary Commemorative Volume launch. I'd like to introduce Andrew Waltho. Andrew is currently a Chief Geologist, Energy, Diamonds and Minerals with Rio Tinto Exploration, based in Brisbane, and the current President of the AIG. Andrew has worked as both an exploration and mining geologist. He is keenly interested in the development of mining projects, particularly in the interactions required between professionals from different disciplines to see projects through development into production and as opportunities mature. Andrew will then introduce Mike. Mike, who is an exploration geologist with 40 years experience, specialising in porphyry copper gold and epithermal gold in the Southwest Pacific. He's worked on Tedi since 2014, consulting to the exploration group, which has led to the New York Breccia discovery in 2017. He's currently Manager Geology and a Director of Canterbury Resources. And hopefully a little bit later on during this, we'll get to speak to Mushi Wera. Mushi is the current MD and CEO of Tedi Mining Limited. He has spent over 30 years at Tedi, working his way up from the graduate development program as a chemist. He's also the chairman of the Tedi Development Foundation and a councillor with the PNG Chamber of Mines and Petroleum, amongst other things. So without further ado, I'd like to ask Andrew to take the floor. Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Yeah, I guess I was really pleased when AIG had the opportunity to participate in the publication of this volume. It was released in July last year, and it's a really interesting read. I was involved in preparing and editing the volume along with our publications team, what makes it important to me is that it's a collection of stories about the development of the project and the discovery of the deposit, which is something, you know, the sharing of stories like that, I think, is something as a profession we do nowhere near enough of. It's a, you know, all of the chapters in the book really tell first-hand stories of the people who were there on the ground, involved in the project. Some are technical stories, others are stories of what life was like in Papua New Guinea at the time when the project was being developed in what was a pretty remote part of the country. And just the interactions between people in different disciplines, and the work that was done, and how it was all managed is a terrific case study that is really worth reading. The editors, which include Mike, along with Estella Chung, Professor Hugh Davies from the University of Papua New Guinea, Keith Hay, Awala Rarura, Tony Hope and Fred Pratt have done a terrific job in putting the volume together. So, you know, I really encourage everybody on the call to make time to get hold of the copy and read the volume. It's there's a lot to be learnt about every aspect of the work we do as exploration and mining professionals. And I hope that we can, as an institute, we can use this publication as a model for more of the same. I think, as I said before, I think they're a really valuable contribution to our profession, and a great way of communicating, especially to young geoscientists, what they're potentially letting themselves in for. So with that, I'll pass over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Andrew. I think I'm online.
Yep.
All good, Peter? And what I'll do is I'll actually share my screen. Okay, hopefully you can see that. Good afternoon, Mushy. How are you? Welcome from. You're muted. Don't need to say. Just give me a thumbs up. Actually. Good to see you. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, look, it's taken a couple of years to pull this together. If anybody says writing a book is easy, I didn't write it, but compiling a book is easy. I've got some news for them. Look, this is the front cover. It's the 50th anniversary commemorative volume. It had humble beginnings. We were looking at, myself and Mark Perlow, and Brisbane guys probably online. We were looking, or Mark was looking at some old geochem data at the exploration base at Tedi there one day, and he said, "Oh, crikey, this data goes back to 1968," and this was in 2018. And we did some very quick maths and thought, well, hell, that was 50 years ago. You know, like perhaps the geos that were on site, we should do something about it. So we thought there were a few books on Tedi, like coffee table books, some very good ones on the mine itself. I think there was a 30th anniversary and perhaps even one earlier. I can't quite remember. Glossy, nice photos, you know, covered the operation quite well from back in 83, 84 when the mine first opened. But there wasn't actually a lot, there weren't actually a lot of even technical papers in the out on the deposit itself, but there certainly wasn't a compilation, or no one had really written up the history. So we thought, well, look, let's talk to Mushy and his team at the what was the media centre in those days, and with the idea that we'll, you know, ring around, see who's got a few photos, a few stories, and put together another coffee table book. Well, anyway, the coffee table book ended up being this 300-page, 30-odd personal stories from geologists and other professionals that were or had been working at the mine, just sort of really from day one. And I see Chris is online, who was on there on day one, right through to the present. And so, like Andrew says, it's interesting to see, you know, a compilation of the history of a deposit that that sort of meant a lot. It means a lot to a lot of Australian geologists, because a hell of a lot of Australian geologists went through that place. But also to a hell of a lot of Papua New Guinean geologists as well, and other professionals who started off their training in the industry at Tedi and continue to do so. So back to what my notes I've got in front of me. This photo here is, I thought it was quite good from the point of view. It's looking east over what we call the New York Breccia. It's a new deposit that we discovered in recent years, right on the edge of the open cut. Actually, the open cuts, I took the photos, actually just behind me, a few hundred meters. But that few hundred meters is so steep and so difficult to get in and out of that this close to the pit, you can see the drill rig, but in the bottom left-hand corner, you can see the helipad and the camp. We have to actually camp out. And that's pretty much what exploration does around that place, and did in the early days, of course, and still continues to do when it's operating in the area. It's at the deposit is right up against the Irian-Jaya border. We're about, I think, 12 kilometres from the Indonesia. A long way from the coast. It's, I think, 500 kilometres in a straight line up the Fly River, and then it turns into the Tedi River, which is down underneath those clouds. And it also at altitude, we're at about 1,800 meters there. So it's cool to cold. It's rugged, and it's goddamn wet. It gets between 10 and 15 meters of rain a year. Like pretty much rains every day. But a great place to work. Fantastic geology, absolute stunning geology. And so the book's a story, and so nothing's changed. It was like that back in the early days, remote, rugged, cold, wet, but they persisted and discovered the ore body. So the volume starts off with It's personal experiences, but we've sprinkled a bit of history in amongst it. So the first story actually starts with Bill McGee compiled the history of the place up to the Second World War. But there's an interesting thing in it. In fact, I love this little lithograph or whatever. I found it on the internet on the left-hand side here. I'll just zoom in a little bit so you can see it a bit better. So Bill starts the volume off on a historical note with the recording of alluvial gold in the Tedi by none other than Lawrence Hargraves, which should ring a bell with most Australians anyway, during the 1876 Albertus expedition up the Fly River in what was a steam launch called Neva. Now, I don't know quite what I imagined with people and expeditions in PNG, but when I saw that lithograph, I didn't expect that. In fact, I wonder what the guy sitting in the dinghy at the back had done, because obviously he's persona non gratis, but up the front is Delbertus in his pith cap and all that sort of stuff. And I guess Hargraves is sitting in there stoking the fire. Hargraves was later to become a renowned or an aeronautical engineer and recognised on the $20 Australian bill, for those that don't know. But what's important is Kennicott's geologist back in 1972, a guy called Bill White, was involved in ground selection in PNG for Kennicott and reported, and the report of, or Hargraves' report of gold in the Tedi was a factor in his ground selection. So it goes right back to then. Anyway, the next, there's also, I won't go through every page in all detail, but you know, you're going to get a copy and all going to get a copy and read it. Jerry, I'll mention him shortly. He was there very much part of the early days. I see Chris is online. G'day, Chris. Can't give me a thumbs up, but anyway, I hope he's hearing me. This photograph in the middle of the helicopter and actually Doug Fishburne looking at rocks in the Tedi was taken by Chris Larkin. The day that they discovered the outcrop of Tedi in 1968, sometime in the middle of 1968. So quite an historic photograph. So we've got 3 or 4 guys: Chris, Jerry, Keith A, and Fred Pratt. Next few chapters, I'll just flick through to give you a bit of a feel for what the book's like. This is obviously double page you're looking at the moment. But it was an interesting place, and this photograph you can see in the center here, that's actually the Mount Fubulan in the background. This is what was called Okgila or Sulphide Creek. This is the original camp here. The exploration guys worked out of. And the photograph on the right, a lot of rain up there I mentioned before. It does flood, caused a few issues with that camp, and it probably was the real reason, or main reason, it was shifted onto a plateau further south at Tabubil a few years later. Keith Hay from Kennicott, who was there during the drill out. Keith was actually the first, my first boss as a geologist when I started way back in, let's just say, early 80s. So Jerry, Chris, and Keith and Fred give us a very thorough account of the discovery of the mineralization at Fubulan by geologists Doug Fishburne and John Felderhoff. Both have now passed away. Doug back, I think, in 2012, and John just very recently. And history of the subsequent drilling. And interestingly, because of limitations with helicopters at altitudes and loads that they could fly, a lot of the earlier drilling was down lower and off Mount Fubulan. It wasn't until bigger helicopters in hole 17 that they actually drilled a discovery hole from the top of Fubulan. It was tough country to explore in. If you have a bit of a read, you'll hear that there was a crash of a Bell 47 on Fublan that took the lives of pilot Dave Binney and field assistant Robbie Robinson. There's 2 mountains named after them in the area, Mount Binney and Mount Robinson. Doug Fishburne was in the helicopter, and although badly hurt, survived. And there followed an amazing story of a rescue led by field assistant Gus Salzman. It's one of many remarkable stories in the book, and you know, the other thing about the book, you'll be amazed at and entertained by the cast of characters who passed this through Octedi during this period. And I'll have a few words about that again shortly. So then the story continues. Kennecott were there till about 1975, or till 75. They couldn't come to an agreement with the national government on mining the deposit, so they departed. The national government set up the Octedi Development Corporation. Hugh Davies, who's referred to as Professor Hugh Davies, who's back down in Canberra now, but was involved in the training of an awful lot of, in fact, I would probably say nearly all of the, and his team, nearly all of the national geos that took on geology at the University of PNG. He took on the job as manager of OTDC technically, and ran it through. I'm looking for page 98, so I'm nearly there. I'll just go a bit faster. So I apologise for those authors I'm flicking over. I don't want to. People can buy the book and read it themselves. Here's Hugh. So he took on the job as to drive the project and through. Well, there were a lot of interested parties at that stage, being the obviously the national government, which was fledgling and needed some sort of revenue, basically, and Octedi was it. And so for a few years, the government actually funded exploration there, and quite a number of the Geological Survey, or the BMR at that stage, was involved in that. A couple of key geologists consulting or providing guidance. Everybody would know of Bill Lacey out of Townsville Uni, probably not so well. Armine Banfield, Fred Cook, and Jerry Rayner were key advisors on the technical side of things. Oh, I might as well stop here and have a look. So this is an aerial photograph from north to south. The Indonesian border is just off to the right. Looking south, this is the mine corridor. Those 2 twin bumps at the back end, that's Mount Andrew. That was one of our recent discoveries. It's a intrusive centre. Alteration, some mineralisation. We've only just drilled a couple of holes into it. That's at the southern end. That's less or 1 million years old, or slightly less. It's at the southern end of our corridor. This is Mount Fublan here. All those little dirt things are drill pads with the Hong Kong camp on top. So Hugh and David and a couple of other guys continue this story after Kennecott with the formation of OTDC in 1975, and they continued exploration while negotiations commenced to attract a mining company to develop the deposit. I mentioned Bill Lacey and Armine Banfield and Jerry Rayner, who are recognised for their contribution to ore body knowledge during this period. Now, Bill Biggie tells of he worked there as a geologist on the hill during this time. There's Fuileki, I just passed by. George did a PhD on skarns at Erceg and also the skarns at Octedi. There's Bill. Title of his story, Hong Kong Drill Camp, cold, damp, and a long way from the bar. I know Bill quite well, very well. Fond memories of Octedi, if you could say that. in his words, he said that exploration camps being peripheral to civilization accumulate a proportion of characters if for no other reason such people don't fit into niches in metropolitan society. I guess you could say that about pretty much any exploration camp around the world. Tabooba, which was as peripheral as you could get, had a good sprinkling of such types. So you'll have, buy a copy, you'll be able to read about Bruce, the dozer operator, old chap, and ex-Vietnam pilot Captain Lick. All good stories, and that's the thing about this. These are all personal experiences in here, and all these recollections of the people they met there. It's just absolutely amazing. And then, okay, so then 76, 77, so 77, 78, the consortium was set up, BHP was the managers, and pretty much exploration shut down then until, it was a moratorium on exploration there until 1988. So BHP and the consortium set up the mine. So that's a view looking west, Mount Binney on the horizon, Indonesia over the back. You can see Mount Fubulan in the middle there with, on the right-hand side, development starting on what's the north side, I guess. And this is the Philomean Ridge down in the foreground here, where at that stage there was so it was a gold mine from 83, 84 till about 87. So that's a CIP plant, and then it changed over and became a flotation plant, which it is now, and still in the same place. Roger, one of the board directors, his story about the importance of the rivers. One of the things is it's remote, and other than well, you can fly in and out, but that's obviously for passengers and small freight. The only way to get in and out of the place is to come up the Fly River. It's an 800-kilometre long journey, takes days to Kiunga, and then it's another 100 kilometres by road to Booble. So the importance, the river is an important lifeline. And Roger talks about it. One of the things you wouldn't believe, but periodically, usually once every 12 years, people that know the cycle of the Earth and the Sun will recognise that. Marinkovic, can't remember the name of the guy. Cycle, there's a drought, and the river goes down, and the boats can't move up and down. So the freight can't come in, the fuel can't come in, and of course the concentrate can't go out. And we've just gone through a period of that, and that's just something you have to operate around. Another issue with the rain up there is geotechnical stability. So geomorphology and mapping of just incredible, the landslide debris and evidence for older landslides in the area a long time ago, but even up until recently. And in fact, we had a major, and in fact, I've got an image of it coming up shortly. So it's another profession closely related to the exploration geologists, get tied in at the development stage. And then so during that period, there was a lot of work by the BHP geologists doing resource definition type stuff, bulk sampling, geotechnical investigations, a lot of infill drilling, and led to the discovery of the Southern Porphyry, which was another system just to the south, became part of the ore body. In fact, we mentioned Captain Lick before. I think that's him flying that helicopter upside down almost. Where was he? I've lost him now anyway. So the next few slides, that's the next few chapters, Fred, Charlie and Floyd tell of being based at Tabooble, and which has now become a major centre. With the development of, which had by now become a major centre, with the development of the mine as its sole purpose, a road was connected from Tabooble to the port of Kiunga, I mentioned before, on the Fly River, 100 kilometres to the south. Air services expanded. Construction of the mine, initially as a gold operation, mining the gold was initially a gold operation, mining the gold cap, which commenced in 84 and transitioned to a copper gold mine in 87. This photograph on the left, Foileki there with the Prime Minister, Michael Samari, and this is the famous, what they call the stick model. So no 3D geological models in computers, pieces of doweling that was triangular in cross section. So you could view, so you had three ways you could view the deposit, where you looked at from one direction, you saw grade coloured up, you looked at it from another direction, you saw alteration, you looked at it from another direction, you saw geology, and that's the famous stick model, which unfortunately doesn't, as far as I know, survive to the day. Some of the BHP guys, some of the local visitors. Fred, who's hopefully he's online, has had a lot to do with BHP since, in fact, right up until very recently. Surveyor by trade, but pretty much project managed the logistical side of things during the development. This photograph here is one of the edits with some of the bulk sampling during the development or early stages of development. So in 1988, we should be up to page 107. It's only 174 pages. I'll just go up to Joe Seeger's there. I'll just go up to, I was talking about geotechnical instability. This is a landslide after an earthquake only a few years ago that blocked. This is our road going from Tabooble on the right-hand side up to Oktedi behind me. Blocked the road for nearly a week. Australia's moving north, as we're in the fold belts, does a lot of damage to PNG. So Graham, the BHP. So Graham, Paul Wright, Wainatamu. They're the next 3 or 4 chapters. Tell of the regional drainage sampling program. This is when after 1988, when BHP exploration were given the role of exploring outside of the special mining lease. And so they tell of a regional drainage sampling program that led to the discovery of the Townsville deposit located about 5 kilometres north of Oktedi in 1989. And then Oktedi had a change of heart, I guess, and decided that they were going to explore regionally in PNG. There's Paul there. And Warwick and John and Warwick tell of exploration some distance away from Oktedi. They went as far as New Britain at times, but this picture on the right is Bolivar down towards the southeast. John was involved in exploration up in the Star Mountains. And then the book closes with a chapter or chapters on what was a sort of a reinvigoration of near mine exploration and the tenements that Oktedi owned around the mine. So they focused back on the mine, which started about 2012 when Rob Spiley was brought in to do exactly that. And they quickly focused on Townsville, and this is some of the high grade, I was going to say Skana, high grade ore from the Townsville area. Got very excited about it. It's still being looked at. It's very close, only 5 km from Oktedi, but there's a mountain or two in between. But I came in 2014, as well as a couple of others. So Richard Jongens doing regional mapping, and Peter Pollard looking at the geology of, well, Oktedi itself, and also anything we were drilling regionally, and Townsville itself. So with all that work, it's led to the discovery of this breccia pipe, quite a large one. In fact, that's the middle photo there. Putting my finger pointing at it won't hurt, but you can see my hand there. So that's in the background, that's the northern end of the pit, and the breccia just sits right here on this hill. That's Mount, well, it's New York, just sits in there. So the future of Rock Teddy is pretty good if we can get that drilled out and a resource up, and the miners can find a way of getting into it and feeding their dirt up to the plant, which is up the top of the hill. You'll find Peter and Richard have updated there's Richard there, have updated and is on the right-hand side there, in his typical New Zealand field gear, which works well at Octedi. But they've updated the geological maps and geology sections model of Octedi. A lot of dating's gone into this work. You've probably seen some of Peter's papers, and also the Townsville and New York bridges. I've finished basically. There's a few people I'd like to thank who provided encouragement. Firstly when I wrote, came up with the initial concept, and subsequently formed the core of the editorial board reviewing and fact-checking submissions, and that's Professor Hugh Davies. Thank you, Hugh, for all your help. Keith Hay over in New Zealand, Tony Hope, who helped me with the original concept layout, and Fred Pratt, who's just an incredible historian on Octedi, Mushi, who's online, and to Estella, who was at the time at the Media Centre at Octedi, for approving the concept in the first place, and of course Andrew, Fiona and Wincy at AIG Publications, who made the final product possible. And finally, just to all the contributors for their stories and photos, because it obviously wouldn't be a book without their stories. So,
thank you, Mike, and good afternoon. And thanks for the invite for this afternoon. Just when we were putting the book together and with all the stories coming in, I had a chance to review some of the stories. Actually, very fascinating, and a lot of our employees who have been hired, in recent times, don't appreciate the struggles and the challenges that the pioneers went through in those early days. And we had the privilege of meeting some of them, I think 2 years back now, Mike, when we had that 50-year anniversary program here, and we invited a few of them to visit site.
Yeah, late 2018.
Late 2018. And
10 or 8 or 10 came up from all over the place and had a few days at Octedi. It was great.
And it's good, and they brought their wives along as well, and it's good to see that they were still fit and healthy, and able to move around and see the places where they once used to work in. So and they had a chance to meet up with some of the local leaders and people who were here, and again it was an excellent reunion and a historical event in itself. And well, hopefully one day we can have another one of that before mine closure, and whoever's left remaining and standing, we can bring them back here as well. But for me, it has been an honor, again, to now lead this company as the first Papua New Guinean national to do so. I've worked here for 30 years now. Started off in '88 under the graduate development program, so we were the first intake during the BHP days there. I worked in nearly all departments in Octedi, from the mine, mill, Tabobil, down to Kionga, Bege, Moresby. I've been up and down the river, visiting all 158 villages. We've established very strong relationships with all the community members, 147,000 members on the CMC. And I think Octedi is just going to get bigger, better, and stronger as we go forward. We are now a 100% PNG-owned company. A few people, probably wrote us off when the government took over, thinking that with government interference, the like other state-owned enterprises, we will start going downhill. But that wasn't the case. We actually raised the value of this business over the last 5 years from 1.5 billion US dollars to 3.2 billion US dollars. So excellent work by our strategic business planning team, that was formed 5 years ago. And part of the process, they were able to extend mine life by a further 3 years from 2026 to now 2029. There are some strategic imperative projects that we need to undertake within this period of time to realize the full value. And obviously the exploration as well that needs to continue to extend mine life beyond 2029. So few challenges ahead of us, but we have a great team in place at the moment. That the workforce is just full of pride in terms of us being a 100% PNG owned, and everyone is contributing to make Optedi a successful organization. Having said that as well, we are an example, or I guess a model now for PNG, given where the government wants to take the mining industry to in terms of extracting more benefits, I guess, or its fair share from the mineral and oil and gas sector. And the government is seeing Optedi as the test case to say, if we can run a successful 100% PNG-owned mining company, can we also do that in other areas? So yes, that has created some tension, I guess, with our foreign investors. But I think through discussions and negotiations, there can be an agreement that can be reached in terms of a win-win outcome for all parties. So that's where things are at the moment. But otherwise, to Mike and the team and all the authors, thank you so much. It's something that we'll never repeat again, and it's just so good to be able to capture all those magic moments of past years there. And it makes an excellent reading. So again, thank you to all the contributions from everyone. So any questions? I'm open to any questions, and yeah.
Thanks, Moshi. We'll hopefully some people put some questions in, but while we have you there, I guess I'd like to ask, over, I guess, a 50-year history, which is pretty phenomenal for most mining operations, least of all one that's in the highlands of Papua New Guinea. What has it meant for the communities in PNG? I guess they've had to either, depending on how you look at it, for the brunt of it, or more importantly, have had the benefits of mining in their backyard. Is it something that's always worked well? Obviously, there's other places in PNG and other places in the world where mining is not viewed well, but to have a history that long, it must be a positive thing.
A huge benefit for the people in this region. They know the significance of Optedi. In fact, they're so grateful for the people who found Optedi and were able to develop this great mine. With the dry season, the dry spells that we've had resulting in suspension of operation, they saw the impact without Optedi and how that would affect their lives. So this mine is a godsend for the people of this region. Very remote, 2 hours flying time from Moresby here. Only way up to Tabobel is by river. I mean, if there were no flights. And yeah, just a struggle. Just next door, we have the Teleforming district. Again, they don't have a mine there at the moment. There's talks about the Freedom mine opening up there. But they're really struggling with government services and, getting any development in that area. So the mine has been able to attract, all the modern amenities and everything here, and that's helped with education, that's helped with health, improving health standards, quality of life. Obviously, the challenges with what happens post-closure and whether the people are able to continue sustaining their livelihoods beyond that. But that's a bit of work that we're doing with the local communities themselves. We've contributed so much to the province itself, over 11 billion kina in benefits. most going to the different beneficiaries, and unfortunately, we don't see a lot of that translating into tangible, outcomes for the province. So that is a concern for us. In our 3-year business plan over the next, the 3 years, we expect to generate around 3 billion kina, with most of that going to our shareholders, which is the national government and the 3 Western Province entities. And so the challenge for them is, how do they use this money wisely? Because once the oil is gone, it's gone. There's no second chance. So that's where the challenges are for us at this point in time. So it's all about, leaving a great story behind, leaving a positive legacy. We've had our fair share of challenges with lawsuits from the environmental impacts. But I think all of that can be offset by the good that Octedi has generated. Now we just have to turn that into tangible outcomes. So that's where we are at this current time. So we are looking at, with our current life of mine, it's at 2029, so 9 years to go, not long. In the exploration space, it's more likely that we're going to go into smaller underground mines at this stage. And we're going to do some further investment in that to start developing those opportunities before we run out of time. So that's going to be important just to keep the economy in this area and the services ticking over, at least for a few more years after we exhaust the main pit. So that's where we are at the moment.
Excellent. Thanks, Mushi. Appreciate that. We'll try to get Chris Larkin on. Chris, are you able to unmute yourself? No, it may not be possible. Mike, do you have Chris's thingy what he sent in? It might be better if you read it out.
Be a good idea if I unmute myself. Technology. Chris, hopefully you're online. Hopefully you can hear me. You sent through so Chris was Chris Larkin. So Chris was in PNG a long time before, a few years before the Octedi, before he became a field assistant with the Octedi group, and all sorts of odd jobs up there. And joined Kennecott and was with Felderhoff, and Doug Fishburne on the days that the deposit was discovered, and actually took that fantastic historical photo. So yeah, he and came up. He was one of the guys that came up for the reunion at the end of 2018, and yeah, there was a lot of people very happy to see him. So anyway, Chris has passed on a few words in case the technology's beaten him. He said Chris is watching from Atherton. G'day, Chris, and would like to congratulate everyone involved in bringing the book together. Jerry Rayner, he's the Canadian geologist that was there in the early days, and I are the last survivors, I being Chris, are the last survivors of the team responsible for the discovery. And I'm sure Jerry is thoroughly chuffed, as I am, to see OTML still being a world major producing mine after so many years since discovery in 1968. He passes his best wishes on to all the contributors to the book, and best wishes to the whole OTML organisation. Mushi, you can take those best wishes back to everybody, and he says keep digging. All right, Peter, I'll hand back to you.
Thanks, Mike. Well, I think we don't have any questions from the floor, and no one's got some stories that they're willing to share, and that may be for the best, depending on what those stories might have been. So I'd now like to invite Mike, Andrew, and Mushi, if you have any last words before we sign off. Mike.
Look, I was absolutely overwhelmed and amazed. Well, overwhelmed by the enthusiasm of these people. Just kept coming out of the woodwork when we advertised or put the idea out there of compiling this book. So look, you know, look, a lot of thanks to those people. There was a lot of people who indicated an interest. Look, there's room for a volume 2 if these people would just submit their stories, and also the photos. Just the book's full of photos. I forgot to mention that before. Wonderful historical document from that point of view. It's a template that I'm talking to Andrew about using on other deposits. Let's just say that and leave it there. Over to you, Peter.
Thank you, Mike. Mushi, have you got any last words there?
Yeah, my screen's gone blank, but I can hear you, Peter, and Mike there. 2 things. We are looking at establishing a museum on site and capture some of these events and stories, so people have an opportunity actually to read and see some of these great photos. Not everyone will have access to the book or get a copy of the book, so I think we see this as an opportunity for more people to see what's happened in the past. Secondly, we are conducting our house boom meetings, or it's called town hall meetings. So we're briefing all our employees and contractors on state of the business and what it looks like going forward. But one thing I've been sharing with everyone is Tedi has a soul. Whilst in terms of numbers, we're not as big as Freeport and some of these South African mines. We serve the whole nation. Our shareholders are 8 million people of Papua New Guinea, and the country just relies heavily on Tedi's contributions. Hence, it's just important for all of us to commit to the company, do our best, and make it successful. So the benefits will flow on not only to employees, but everyone in the country. So that's the challenge that we've set for all our employees, and people have risen up. They've risen up to meet the challenge. And despite this year being a tough year for us with much lower grades than in past years, I think we'll still deliver on our dividend commitments similar to last year to our shareholders. So yeah, that's where we are at the moment.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Mushi. Andrew, any last words from yourself?
Oh, just really, Peter, just to commend the book to everybody. As I said, it really is a story about how it's teams that make discoveries. We talk about individuals and their roles, which are important, but the individuals wouldn't be there and able to do what they were doing without a team behind them, and it really does tell that story. We wanted the book to be a reference as well, so it's anybody that wants to look into Tedi more, it's all thoroughly indexed, and hopefully it's both an enjoyable read and it'll be a good reference going forward. So thanks to Mike and all of the contributors again who helped to put it together. We're very proud to be involved.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Mike, Andrew, and Mushi, for your contributions today. It was a really interesting book, and I'm sure everyone will get out there and buy it soon. So just head to the AIG website and you'll be able to track it down. And I'd just like to invite everyone to our RPG e-forum next Thursday week, so the 18th of February, where Andrew will join us again and update us on the updates to the JORC code. So thanks very much on behalf of the Queensland branch of the AIG. Good evening, everyone.